That's from an African American point of view, but what I really want you to focus on here is what happened from the white perspective. The balance in the United States has always been heavily weighted towards the liberty side. The only time that that changed was when the New Deal came along after the Depression. So what does this all mean now? From my perspective, where my research has taken me, it's really, everything is tied into what happened in the 1970s. If you read the Trilateral Commission on the Governability of Democracies, their findings in a 1975 report said that the demands on democratic government grow while the capacity of democratic government stagnates. What else was going on in the 1970s? There were several prophets I have found that in my reading and in my research. I found the writings of several prophets, and I might add to that one Hummel, who is another prophet that I added on since I compiled this list. Really, when you read it and put all of these people together and all of their writings together, you can recognize that academically, these prophets especially indicated that there was a wrong turn taken in 1968. Well, what happened in 1968? On April 4th, Martin Luther King was shot. On June 6th, Robert Kennedy was shot. By August, we had the Democratic National Convention and the riots in Chicago. All through the decade, we had women's liberation coming out. We had the hippies and the huge increase in the amount of push for legalization of drugs. So by the 1972, when McGovern was defeated in the election, the slogan which came out and actually worked against him was amnesty, abortion, and acid. And this was what people were fighting against. And the arc of a swinging pendulum can be traced here from 1964 through 1968 and into 1972, when you can see we went from what some people considered to be an extreme, which was nothing more than just moving towards that equality and that equilibrium which John Rawls talks about. And then we took this hard turn back away from that equilibrium towards the liberty. So from my perspective, looking at it from Miles' law, in my shoes, Nixon was definitely a wrong turn for America, especially from the inner city perspective as well. It's just not from me as a gay man, it's from my husband as an African American man, it's from the people that I work with in Liberty City in the Belafonte to Colsey Center. And it's well supported in public administration doctrine and philosophical doctrine and political science doctrine. That, and what I'm really going to focus on here is Frederick Thayer. I found his ideas to be more supportive of my work than anybody else's. I'm going to talk about Kingdon's policy window. When you think of Kingdon's policy window, the agenda setting process has three streams that have to converge in a policy window. Problem stream, that's easily identified. The policy proposals stream, they have to be the right kind of proposals. So you have to come up with good, high quality, viable proposals. And then you have to influence the politics stream so that those three streams can converge. What Frederick Thayer talks about is that the idea that voting is not an institution of democracy if you are black or gay or non-Christian or otherwise a minority. And in some degrees, if you are a woman who believes in choice, you are also not going to have democracy on your side. And that's what Frederick Thayer said. It is absolutely impossible to assist the change we seek by winning an election. And that change can be thought of as a movement toward equilibrium, where all people in America have equal opportunity. Alienation comes as a result of that. What happens, and you can see it by the turnout here, voter turnout from 1988 through 2008. The top line, of course, is white. And they drastically fell off in the 2008 election, and blacks drastically improved. So we actually had in 2008 for the first time, a balance between African Americans and whites showing up to vote. But since then, we all realize that really nothing has changed for African Americans. As a matter of fact, the poor have gotten dramatically poorer, and Hispanics and Asians traditionally had very, very low voter turnout. And it's because they don't think a vote matters to them. Nothing's going to change no matter who they vote for, no matter who gets in. Nothing's going to change for them. So the problem is not an institutional problem. It's a problem with the hierarchy within the institutions. A significant let's look at a community organization that has 18 significant positions highlighted in it. And in a hierarchical point of view, it looks a lot like this. So if you have this kind of an organization, Thayer's argument is that this is a conflict perpetuating device to have an organization structured this way. So let's look back at this diagram here, the way Frederick Thayer might see it. We have our theory of justice. And Frederick Thayer mentioned that if we have liberty unrestrained, then we've got unorganized anarchy. But if we have equality totally enforced, then we have to have bureaucratic control of everything, which is socialism. And he said that's just as oppressive and alienating as is the hierarchy. Because socialism requires hierarchy to work as well in his mind. So he wants to find a third way. Well, what would the third way look like? The problem which he has is that when you've got hierarchy and you cannot stop hierarchy, some individuals are permitted to destroy others. And so the only way around this, in order to get better policy out of this process, and in order to have democracy work the way it was intended to work, you cannot have individuals who have been empowered to destroy the lives of others. A classic example here, speaking of African American young males, is the drug policy. When Nixon declared the war on drug and then it got continually worse, there is a 200-to-1 disparity on sentencing when you consider the number of blacks that use crack cocaine versus the amount of possession of crack cocaine that will result in a minimum 5-year sentence. And the impact of that has been a conviction rate 200 times what it should be. So what Thayer argues is that this kind of policy making would never have happened, and it can be reversed if we bring small face-to-face groups together rather than having a hierarchical system where somebody can impose and destroy other people's lives. So in 1973, he looked forward to a future that he couldn't imagine how it could be organized, but he knew theoretically what it had to look like. And what he wrote is that an almost infinite number of small groups would be necessary, and they would also have to be dealing with huge numbers of written documents. You've got to remember in 1973 a lot of the computers were still being programmed with punch cards. Two authors in that same year have shaped what I've put together from my theory: Frederick Thayer and Clifford Geertz. Clifford Geertz was a social anthropologist. In his book he described thick description, and what he wrote in his book was that we needed to have a consultable record of what man has said. This coincides with what Frederick Thayer was talking about when he mentioned that we need to have an almost infinite number of small groups with huge numbers of written documents. What will actually do that nowadays is a relational database. My relational database that I am proposing for my theory has this kind of a query language where you can, once the documents are already being put on the internet, so we don't have to worry about that. Web 2.0 took care of that when user-generated content allowed everybody to participate in the process of putting these documents together. And it's not just documents, it's media of all kinds. The 6 genres that I talked about earlier can all be found or searched or put together through digital means. And so they can all be put into this database. So what that database does when you look at an organizational structure is, if you get rid of the hierarchy of these 18 positions here that we looked at earlier, and if you put them together in an organization where there is no hierarchy, it would look something like this. So if we put together in Thayer's words, if there is a key unit short of the world itself, it is not the individual but the small group process. And he also mentions that there needs to be multiple linkages to achieve an ever-widening consensus with other small group processes. And so what I've got here outlined is a group of 6 individuals here with one specific focus, 6 individuals here, 5 individuals here, and they are linked together with this black square where there's 6 individuals that end up steering this organization with no one person in a position of hierarchy. Now, if you put that to that one layer of organizations, if you call that a community group in an inner city area in Liberty City, for example, and then you stack 9 other cities on top of it, you end up with something that looks like this. Once again, there's no way that you can shape a hierarchy into this organization. It is a completely fluid organization where you end up with small face-to-face. And the only way that you can get face-to-face interaction between these stacked groups, where each one of these individuals here in this column are a specialist in their particular arena, where this individual here stacked 10 cities high, they are specialists, these 10 individuals. So not only can you have these individuals meet face-to-face at a city-based layer across the bottom where these 6 individuals meet face-to-face, but in a virtual reality organization you can have them meet vertically, and they can meet face-to-face through their avatars. So 10 identical city organizations based in 10 different cities linked through a virtual reality web-based platform, and the platform is known as Open Simulator. Open Simulator was just launched last November by the company that has been running Second Life for 10 years. Second Life is a gaming platform, and that's where I've already created this type of an organization, because Second Life is free and available to everybody, and it's got a little easier learning curve to it than Open Simulator will. But once this is launched and you need the controls of an organization and governing institution, you would be well advised to move to the Open Simulator platform. So the vehicle, the engine, and the fuel. The vehicle is this organization that I've just described here, where instead of these 18 individuals put together as a hierarchy, you have the same 18 individuals put together as a non-hierarchical group, and then you stack them 10 high. This model here was created for an analysis by the Occupy Wall Street movement, where if you can imagine 951 cities in 82 different countries using a translating platform that already exists in Second Life, then you can see how the Occupy movement could actually put together, through their social media that already exists, by just adding one other companion element to Facebook and Twitter, and allow these people to get together on Second Life or an Open Simulator platform so that they could actually create a governing institution. The engine, of course, was the database, which I showed you, and this is how it would be structured here. You'd have the green individual, the green unit represents the operations of the organization. This representation here represents a virtual education and training facility where all of these volunteers, these organizers or employees, could be put in touch with a university-based academic leadership so that they could be trained online in virtual reality, even regardless of where they're from. And the large group behind these individuals is where the fuel comes from. These individuals in red are the individuals who create media. These individuals represented by the blue are the people who put together from that media the individuals who contextualize that media and frame it for policy arguments. And so that's where all of the content is generated, the Web 2.0 content of media. And so with the 3 organizations, this database function, which is being put together this summer, over the summer, is the engine and the fuel put together. And that's what will drive the narrative threads through the query language. So what I have in Miami is I've now been successful. A year ago when I first started meeting with the study circle, we started a conversation about this vacant lot. Well, it's not vacant, it's got some derelict buildings on it. And now, 1 year later, the owner of this property has agreed to donate it to us. So we are in the process now of funding a policy and media institute that will steer and launch community conversations about what you've seen here in my proposal through a dedicated facility, a brick and mortar facility. And also beyond Miami, I've found an organization in Detroit that is very interested in doing that as well. The Alkebulan Village is a similar inner city community organization with a very closely matched mission and purpose of the Belafonte Tacolsi Center, and they've also got land available there, which I think we will be able to leverage to put together this idea as well. So if anybody else has any other cities locations where they would like to bring on board, I would like to actually start this with the 10 organizations that you saw in my virtual representation, in my presentation here. So I look forward to hearing from you. Once again, my name is Lester Leavitt. I am a graduate assistant at Florida Atlantic University in the School of Public Administration, and my email address is LLEAV, as in Victor, ITT@FAU.edu, and I look forward to hearing from you. Once again, that's LLEAVITT@FAU.edu. Thank you for watching the video.